Welcome. We're here with Toast on the Coast podcast that we're restarting again. We had started it last year and took a little bit of a hiatus, and we're back here in Brevard County, Florida.
That's right. And a little slice of paradise right here on the Space Coast, where every 3 days a rocket goes off, or, moons get blocked, or sun gets blocked, something happens.
I'm not really sure what they're launching up there, but I know that it's all this stuff for they can watch us. And
well, who knows? Who knows? Maybe our phones will start working better.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
As if they're not working great now.
No dead zones.
Exactly right.
Well, I'm John Curri, and I have been in business for about 28 years, and the purpose of this podcast is to talk about personal development, helping you in business, sharing life stories, and just getting you to be the best that you can be. I've been very blessed to have been in the real estate business the past 20 years with the Realty World franchise. I've met some incredible people along my journey. And then I'm here with my friend Ellen, who has been a fantastic person in my life, is my life coach and helping me stay focused. And, I see lots of shiny objects throughout the day, and she keeps me grounded, if you will.
I see shiny objects as well, I think. I do too. But you're also win awards. You've got award-winning companies. I mean, this is, you're downplaying a little bit, John. You got some really great stuff.
I don't know. I mean, I think
window and door company.
Yeah.
Right? Electrical company.
Yeah.
Contractors.
Yeah, we've doing a little bit of everything. We're building some nice spec homes. We're selling real estate. We're doing some specialty contract work. So really what I consider myself is I'm in the real estate business and a specialty contractor. So, sometimes you sell something to somebody that needs a remodel, or you buy something that needs a freshening up. So I'm able to kind of help my clients, not only help them buy or sell something, but help them with additional things along the way to enhance their property.
That's right. And you just built a house as well?
So we did that. My wife and I had talked about never building a house again. And then we licked our wounds. The last one we built was in 2004. And we just moved in now. So I guess 20 years. So I guess I think you forget about all the issues 20 years later. So,
but it's like childbirth, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what they say. But I worked for Home Depot for 20-something years. And I completely related the divorce rate to building houses.
Oh.
Every couple I saw that came in that had something to do with building houses, I kind of had that over-under bet as to whether they were going to make it or not.
Yeah.
So it's very stressful. But the cool part is that you and your companies make it easy to do that. So, and that's, like John said, that's what we're here to talk about today is and for the subsequent podcasts that we have.
Yes.
About just life in general and how to get ahead and
be in control of life and living life and not let life live in you and all of that stuff. And right. Ellen and I have learned a lot of things together. We've been on separate paths, and now we're together and work with each other on some personal development and stuff. And I had a really big goal that I wanted to write a book, and I was talking about it for about 4 years. Just every couple days making new notes and kind of designing chapters and stories and all of this, and met Ellen a couple of years ago, and
well, I was doing a professional development class for your company for real estate.
That's right.
And I came in and we were doing it on goal planning and so forth, and I must have hit a chord with you.
Something struck.
And he walks up to me and says, I had this thought maybe at some point I wanted to write a book. And I think the next month I had the first chapter written.
You did.
And you were ready to go. You were saying, I can't believe you did this.
I was amazed. I'm like, this woman is such a go-getter. And so many people are like, oh yeah, well, let's catch up and let's do this. And I've had so many people promise me, even people saying, oh, we need to go to lunch sometime, we need this. And I tell you, when Ellen said she was going to do something, she did it. And I was amazed because I'm so used to being around people who just talk about things.
Right.
And I've always been a doer my whole life, and I always like to, under promise and over deliver. You talk about over delivering here. This woman here is an over deliverer, so I'm grateful to have you in my life. So I appreciate that.
And it's funny how my whole journey started too. It was I was with Home Depot for 20 plus years, got out of that, and opened up a real estate company. Never got my real estate license, but just had the company with a friend of mine who was a broker. We ran that company for a while, and it was sort of the same path a little bit of what you went on, where I just kept thinking, wow, like this was easy. Okay, now I can do the next thing. And that wasn't so bad. And all I was worried about. So I kind of felt you when you talked about the book, that you had started and stopped so many times. And I said, wow, sometimes you just need the right people around you, like
right.
I did. And I remember teaching a professional development class, and a lot of people will remember this. I used to stand up in front and say, yeah, I'm a public speaker and I do this and that, and I've had this background and did this whole, but I really want to be a rock star. And I kept saying that and kind of speaking it out into the universe. And now my band, now that I have a band, plays.
Now you are a rock star.
Now I am a rock star. 220 shows a year here in Brevard.
It's amazing.
And it's so much fun.
You never picked up a guitar until when?
I got my first guitar when I was 50.
Wow.
And I got my first ukulele when I was like 48, like 48 and a half. And I thought I was going to be the ukulele girl. That was my thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, the guitar doesn't seem so hard. Let me just try it. So really quick story along those lines. I got the guitar. I decided I needed like kind of a self-reflection trip. I drove from here to Nova Scotia, and I had that guitar with me. I think I knew 10 chords on the guitar. Wow. And I figured out what 10 songs would go with those chords and played every honky-tonk that I could find that would let me all the way up to Nova Scotia. Just walked in with my little amp and my guitar.
Was this a solo
just
thing?
A solo thing,
wow.
Yeah, just by myself. Got in the place and I said, and they said, we don't have live music here. And I said, I don't know, somebody told me that you did. And they would either pay me like $50 or buy my meal, or one place gave me a night stay.
Wow.
That I got to stay overnight. So it was kind of cool.
Was it at the Ritz or was it the...
No. Like little honky-tonk, probably Motel 6 or, whatever, Bates Motel, who cares, But it was an experience. And I said to myself at that point, like, I pretty much know I can do anything. Like,
That's incredible.
That was my moment of, wow, like, I think
Your
I can
aha
do this.
moment.
Yeah. And so I hope that everybody, through this podcast, of course, and through our sessions together, I hope everybody gets that feeling at some point. Like,
it's incredible.
You connect with something that you said.
I've always wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing. Like, you always think of yourself, you wake up in the morning like, am I on the right path? Am I in the right career? I never had a doubt with being a father and a husband and all that stuff. But in terms of like, am I in the right direction? Am I living in the right state? Am I living in the right country?
Right.
What if I would have did this, or what if I do this? And so it's interesting to see you go from, Home Depot, corporate trainer to writer, right? You had a stint that you were working with Stephen Covey.
That's right.
For a while, which
the Covey organization, absolutely.
Really impressive.
And I wrote for Home Depot. I wrote manuals for Home Depot. I still write for United Rentals. And then, of course, our local folks around here, which I love. I love our local businesses.
Right.
And any local businesses that wanted some, I always call it a metrics type of thing. If you're missing a metric in your business, there's a training or something that can be done to try and help you out. So I always want to make sure that even small businesses realize that there's a solution to every problem. There really is.
Right.
And it takes action. It takes, some belief in yourself. It takes ignoring some things, like putting things on the shelf.
Sure.
So that way you can stay focused on what you want to do. And it's a blast. I mean, I hope everybody that listens to this podcast has as much fun in life as we do. And we only see each other once a month, and it's like these kind of things or whatever, but whenever we connect, it's
I wake up in the morning.
I did this.
I know we always have to like tell each other how many things we've accomplished, right? So wake up in the morning, I'm excited. I tell everybody there's 24 hours in a day, and it's a lot of time. I mean, a lot of people will say, I don't know, the days are so short. My days are so long. Yeah. I mean, I don't, sometimes I sleep, a full night. Sometimes I get up in the middle of the night. Last night it was like 2:30. I went to bed at like 12, woke up at 2:30, sent a couple emails out, had some really good ideas I wanted to put on paper, so I did. Went back to bed, and then, I only got maybe about 4.5 hours last night, but I like to get about 6 hours. So if you take 24 minus 6, it's 18 hours of a day. How many things you can do in an 18-hour day?
I know. Exactly.
I know how many things you do in a day.
I do a lot.
But
I'm one of those people that I'm somebody that wants to do a lot of stuff. Trapped in a body is somebody that really needs a nap.
Okay.
So I like to nap. I'm a big napper, but I plan all that stuff. Yeah, I plan all that.
Power naps are good. Well, I've gone down the path of wanting to write a book. So I guess I am considered an author now. And Ellen was.
You can find it on Amazon.com. Hashtag.
There you go. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the book.
Sure.
I appreciate all your help. Ellen was very instrumental in that. The book is called The Art of Delegation. And, between my efforts and Ellen's efforts, so we wrote this together. And
so the art is really the art part. ART is really is the basis of a lot of this, right?
Right.
So we talked about it in business. What are the most important things that you need to have? And the art was what it was. So what is
a good attitude, right? For the A.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to be responsible.
Yeah.
You have to be a responsible person. You're sometimes you're in charge of a lot of things, and you have to make sure that you're making the right decisions, right? And then you also have to have trust.
Yeah.
So attitude, responsibility, and trust is the art of kind of a series of things that we're going to do together, Ellen and I, right? The Art of Delegation is the first book of a couple that we're going to write. We're working on the second one now, but wanted to talk about this. And, most people know what the word delegation means, but it's really not something that people focus on, nor do they really make it a part of their daily regiment,
Right.
Some people get confused with, they'll say, oh, you like to delegate, which means you don't like to do anything. Well, this is something that I've used since the beginning of my relationship with my wife. And I remember our first home we bought when we were 22. And I looked at all of the things that came with home ownership. And it's like, okay, well, we have to cut the grass, and you have to weed the flower beds, and you have to keep your house clean, and you have to paint it every 8 years, and you have to make sure that you change your air conditioning filter once a month and all this other stuff, right? So I started looking at all these things I had to do, and I'm like, wow, I don't even know if I want to be a homeowner anymore. Let's go back to the apartment living.
Exactly.
But the first thing I realized was, well, if it's, at that time, it was 20 some years ago, it was like $75 a month to have somebody cut our grass, right? And it's not just cutting the grass, right? Because you have to put gas in the lawnmower. Then every few months you're supposed to sharpen the blade, and then you have to weed eat, and then you have to usually every 3 or 4 months you want to put down some fresh mulch, So there's lots of things that are involved, right? And you look at it and you're like, wow, well, how much time is that going to take? I personally didn't love cutting my grass. So it was nice for me to say, let me delegate that and let me pay somebody to cut my grass.
Right.
So that was the first thing that I learned was like, you know what, let's pay somebody to do something that you maybe are not really good at, you don't enjoy, you don't have time for, or maybe your time is well spent doing something else. Right? Better spent doing something else. So with that being said, that was kind of my first kind of stint at delegation. And
the whole piece of it is that our entire lives we delegate, whether you realize it or not. And to your point, it's not about how it helps you all the time either. You have to think about how it helps the other person when you delegate.
That's a really good point.
It's not just about the lesson that you learn. Wow, I freed up my time. I'm able to do other things. But what about the lawn guy now that can put food on his plate?
Right.
And that he has
got another account.
He's got another account. He gets to advertise. He gets to market. So in that case, right? But think about the people that you delegate to. Much like me, when we had started the book, I told you, I said, look, I've written my own stuff. I've never written with other people before.
Yeah, right.
So I don't know how this is going to go.
Right.
But the delegation piece allowed me to learn some skills that I hadn't learned before. And I would have never had the opportunity to do that.
And if I hadn't trusted you and delegated to you to help me write the book, then I would have been sitting here with a bunch of Google Notes and probably never had a completed project.
Right.
So.
And think about all the real estate people that you come in contact with that didn't know how to do a certain skill and now are proficient at it. Or think about, your kids, what you teach them how to do and how they become proficient at things. So it's not just about what you would consider corporate America, the art of delegation.
Right.
It's really about life.
It's about life. And it's real. And the other key point is it's doing what you love to do and focusing on the things that you're really good at. Right. Yeah. So, some people will joke and say, well, Bob is a jack of all trades and a master of none. just about everybody rather can do anything or in the world of DIY with with YouTube, for example.
Right.
I can certainly change a hot water heater out in my house. It'll probably take me 18 hours, right? All day, 18 hours, when a plumber can do it in 45 minutes.
Right.
So it's about time value of money, which also equals happiness, which allows you to,
and then how much does your wife really trust you to put in a water heater?
Zero. But she's there rolling her eyes and,
watching you jam your thumb.
Right. And then, that the age-old thing was, I learned this from a mechanic. He's like, you're usually one bolt away from a 2-hour job turning into 3 days because you can't get that last bolt out or that wanted to go a little bit through the book. Would encourage you guys to read it.
Amazon.com.
Yeah, and it's really not about the sale of a book. There's no money in really in book sales, but what it is it's the opportunity for myself and Ellen to share life stories and things that we know with other people that could maybe change your life a little bit, right? Every day I meet with people, clients, friends. And I usually always take one or two things away from every conversation and file it and say, well, that was a really good idea, or maybe I should be focusing more on that, or that was really cool that they did that, or something, So that's how books are, right?
That's right.
This is the first book that I read was Zig Ziglar, See at the Top.
That's right. That's right. Well, and he really started that intentional piece where you do everything with intention. Stephen Covey actually kind of perfected it as far as words go, but Zig Ziglar was really about the intentional conversation, the intentional pattern of the way that you do things, and certain ways of doing things. Stephen Covey was more about just put it out there. Put your intention out there of what you want to do. So you going into every conversation expecting that you're going to get little nuggets, you're automatically going to get it because that's the law of attraction. That's how the law of attraction works.
That's a big piece of my life.
From intentional. So even if you're going to a meeting, if you're going to lunch, what are some things that you want to get out of that conversation? Or what are some stories that you want to make sure that you don't forget to tell someone? So if you go into every networking meeting, if you go into every family dinner, right? It doesn't matter what it is. If you go into everything with intention, you're always going to reap rewards from that law of attraction.
Yeah, and I think it's important because, it's people who have, certain aspirations and goals and are organized and believe in every conversation is important. They live better lives because they pay attention to what's happening around them. Right. And the law of attraction is just huge because I involve myself with people that I want to be around. Mm-hmm. And, I work on things that I want to see that I want to happen. I can tell you story after story how I focus on a certain project and it just automatically happens because I spent a majority of my time on that for some reason. You always get what you want, right?
Right. Yeah.
So realistically, in your life, your life is a product of your vision.
Right. And you can always test the law of attraction because it's when you really miss something. Like I can't imagine that you'd ever go a day without talking to Blair.
Never.
Right? Never. So that law of attraction of her always being around and that expectation of her, Blair is like the godfather of this place. John might be the boss, but she really is the place that runs it. She's the one that runs the place. But you think about from a law of attraction standpoint, when you really miss a conversation or a connection with people, you're missing things. The law of attraction is telling you you're not just missing that person, but you're missing the content and the quality of that relationship. Right. So it's big.
Point. Yeah, it's big. It's really as big as you want to make it. I mean, there's some very powerful people in the world who, really just focus on 2 or 3 different things. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in larger organizations that only talk to so many different people, right? So they focus on, well, these are the 3 people I report to because their visions are so big and grandeur that they have to stay focused on getting to the finish line, right? I mean, you don't put a rocket to Mars because it was just a little bit of a thought, right? There's a huge process with that, and making sure you're with the right people. And there's a couple chapters I just wanted to kind of go over.
Yeah, well, this is a great part about the ignore piece, right? About what to ignore and what to stay away from, and what to, really, if you're going to focus on something, there's going to be other things that are going to fall off.
Right.
So.
I remember, well, we'll talk a little bit about ignore. It's the second chapter. First chapter is listen, but I like ignore because there's a
well, geez, there's 1,400 social medias out there now.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Blasting you.
But I'm sure you've heard the phrase. I'll just read out of the book here, a little excerpt here. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. I choose not to know, for instance. I never was engrossed in the latest fad of shows on TV or cable provider. I never watched the sensational news of the O.J. Simpson trial or the latest by the Kardashian tribe. I am and remain untouched by things that do not serve me. So it's powerful, right? If it doesn't serve me, why should I be interested in it? It doesn't mean that I don't like sitcoms or I don't like to watch programs or, American Idol or things like that. Or one of my favorites is Undercover Boss and Shark Tank. Those are my two things I like to watch. But the thing is that, I don't have notifications that come to my phone because I don't really, I have some, but the things that don't pertain to me. I remember coming into the office.
But going back to that O.J. Simpson trial or the Kardashian trial, it's also if you show up at a networking event or you show up when you're meeting people and that's what their topics are, that's what they want to talk to you about is some sensational news story or some sensational something that really doesn't affect you. That's how you start knowing who your people are too.
Right.
Like you start identifying what other people are talking about. Doesn't make them bad people. Doesn't change anything for them, but it changes again your ignore. What do I need to put aside in order so I can focus on better things?
Well, you can only there's only so much information you can process.
Exactly.
Right. So you have to make sure that and you also don't want your pipeline to be full all the time. You want to leave some room But
if somebody came up to you in a party and started talking about Undercover Boss, and a process or a procedure, a strategy, or a way that they finance something, or I'm like all ears, right? I'm like leaning in at that point.
Exactly.
So that from an ignore standpoint, it almost has to go that deep, of you understanding what good comes out of conversations.
It's to the point where it's even on a daily basis. Like I had no idea that there was an eclipse. I mean, there's people running around, and I'm like...
And by the way, let this serve as a public service announcement. If there is a hurricane, call the Curri residents and let them know that there's a hurricane going on.
I have no idea.
Because he won't evacuate.
I had no idea there was a hurricane a few years ago, and I was like, why are people frantic? And Blair had to tell me that there was a hurricane. I guess I really do ignore things, but, I think that's how you get things done. I mean, ignorance is bliss. I love that little part of the book. The other thing that we were going to talk about was vision and plan.
Yeah.
That's a good chapter. Let me just tell you what the chapters are. Listen, ignore, embrace, empower, personal time, trust your gut. I really wanted to talk about that one, but we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
The trust your gut. I'm a gut guy, right? So I always make quick decisions based on my gut. Energize, which... I feel like I'm always the Energizer Bunny. Mm-hmm. I think I'm doing caffeine free. This isn't even... There's no caffeine here. Right?
I love the fact that you have Fresca here. That's Fresca? Like my favorite.
It's like old school. What does it say? Established in 1966.
That's right.
I think I'm officially old now that I'm drinking Fresca.
It's true.
You don't want me on caffeine, trust me. When I drink coffee, I'm all over the place. So believe, vision and plan, believe, and putting it all together. So vision and plan was the next one I had highlighted. What is your planning process? Who is included in the planning once you have a vision for a new project, business, or venture? So the way the book is written is, if you want to explain how it's each chapter.
Sure. Well, it talks about each chapter. It talks about the situation or why we're talking about that particular topic, whatever it happens.
Which are the questions in the beginning.
Correct. And then we go right into some action items, right, of the ideas, and then the results are really your story,
right?
And your personal story. Although I've kind of thrown a few things in that, that happened to me along the way as well, but it was congruent with what you had. It was really a congruent story as far as that goes. But from a vision and planning standpoint, don't you think you plan all the time?
Me personally, or do you think we as people?
Well, you personally. I mean, let's just talk me and you.
Always planning.
Right? I plan how I'm going to get someplace, right? So that I can always try and make right turns.
Right.
I mean, crazy stuff like that. But it's almost a game to me. And I realize how easy planning is. People are like, oh my gosh, I got to make a business plan. And I'm like, you got to make a business plan.
That's your love language?
I know, it's totally my love language.
Right.
But from a planning standpoint, that's what this chapter really is about that vision and who you include.
It is. Yeah. I've always been a planner. As a matter of fact, it's crazy because the house that I just built and moved into in December, it's my long-term house. It's my 20-year, my 30-year house. And I even have plumbing behind the walls in certain parts of the garage if I ever transform those areas for my parents to live and make it an in-law suite.
Yeah.
I've got drains in certain locations. I've got power run in certain locations for if I convert my RV garage to an apartment. Then I've got a 50 amp service run outside the house. So if I move my RV from inside the garage to the outside of the garage, I mean, I've always been a planner. I've always lived 10, 20 years out. Short story, my dad had come to me and I was 18, and he had said to me, he goes, hey, congratulations, you're an adult now. He goes, I just want to let you know the good and bad news. The good news is that you can still stay here. You're not getting kicked out. Some parents kick their kids out and tell them they have to go in the military. I'm not going to do that. But you have to pay either $250 a month for rent, or you have to put $50 in a mutual fund every month. What's a mutual fund? Well, it's a blah, blah, blah. It's a place to save money. I'm going to have a guy come over to the house and meet with you, whatever. So I said, well, the $50 sounds better because the $50 I get to keep, right? The $250 you take. So moral of the story is I sign up with a mutual fund. I give the guy my routing and checking account number, and it's auto-drafted. My dad said it has to be auto-drafted from your account. And then I remember I was married for 4 or 5 years later on, so it was like 27 or 28, and I had forgotten all about it. I had all this money in there, and I took my 50 and I bumped it to 250, like a year afterwards. So it was compounding, and it was like my dad had taught me to plan for the future, right? So vision and plan for later, because it's not about today. It's about later, because you don't know what's going to happen. Right. He says, what if you break your leg and you're going to be out of work I know you're making a lot of money. You're a waiter, you're a bartender. If you break your leg and you're out of work for 6 weeks, what are you going to do? So he kind of programmed me to be like that. And then from the time I built my first house to the time I've built my first business, I've always lived outward. So I feel like I have like these glasses on that are showing me 20 years out, And that's why this chapter is really important to me, especially.
And your parents gave you that gift,
right?
In business, when I do business plans with folks, when we talk about the corporation side of it, I always tell people, okay, before we even start a business plan, let's break up. Right. Tell me how you're going to break up.
I love that.
Tell me how. So much like what your parents did for you as a young adult, of saying, look, you got to plan for the future. I always plan in business. I always plan for the ultimate demise of the end.
Right.
Because then the fortunate part is that then when you're focused on that, you can find ways to prevent that from happening. And how would that happen? And how would it play out? Okay, well, I don't want that to play out that way. So what do I do now to make sure it doesn't play out
I love that.
in that way?
I love that. And that's
and for real estate agents,
that's always been a big thing for me, because I have several LLCs and I've got partnerships with friends, and I've done that. I think I went back like 10 times revisions on my original LLC partnership that I did several years ago because of that same thing. I want to make sure that we talked about this and we talk about this. And it's like, it was almost to the point where, I think one of my partners was like, are we going to get this LLC done? And I'm like, yeah, but let's get it done right.
Yeah, exactly right.
And you never get everything, because there's always something that you forget, or there's a loophole somewhere. But that's a very good point for vision planning.
And the piece of adding the right people.
Right.
So adding the right resources along the way, much like your story about cutting the lawn,
Right.
I'm going to add the right resources. I'm going to add the people that are great at what they do.
Yeah.
Just like I want to be great at what I do, so I'm going to let them be great at what they do. So, I get a tax professional right up front.
Right.
You get all of that information right up front, because if a lot of times people get surprised by things, and it's really just because they didn't figure out the whole story beforehand.
Yeah.
If you figure out the story now in the vision and planning, whoever you're going to have to, and whoever you're building that with, because you built Realty World with a few individuals that, that really were impactful, right, and making sure that all this happened, because I'm sure there were parts you were going, oh my gosh, do I really want to do this, right, at some certain stages, but those people that were around you that said, yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Well, that's the thing too, and it's about being around the right people for sure. I mean, I can honestly say that from a business standpoint, everybody that is involved in the business, we all work together. I believe that we're all partners. We all work together. Everybody's an A+ player in my organizations. My friends are A players. My kids are A players. My wife's an A player. You're an A+ player.
Well, but what do you do with because a lot of people say, okay, that's great that you're surrounded by those players, and in some way, everybody has to realize that you're intentional about making sure that you're around A players. But what happens to the person that gets around the C player? What do they do? And that's a part of the book that we talk about. Is about it doesn't make them bad people. They just have to find their wheelhouse.
Exactly, and you have to make sure that you're definitive and know that you cannot let those people in your wheelhouse. Right. Exactly. So I'm not in crisis mode ever. Mm-hmm. If I am, it's something that is beyond my control. Like, maybe a family member had some type of a medical issue or something. But I'm not in crisis mode because I already know who to let in my circle and who not to let in my circle. Mm-hmm. Right? It's if you start to pay attention to the things that you're doing and the people you're hanging out with, you'll see who you want and who you don't want. And you have to kind of it's not that you're categorizing people, but it's just that you're only focused on the people that are going to uplift you, and that are going to do the same thing. You're going to do the same thing for them as they're going to do for you.
And we have the same makeup when it comes to, I only worry about things once.
Right. Because
once I worry about once, I know I never want to worry about it again.
Correct.
So I put the things in place to make sure that it's not going to happen. So what happens tomorrow if I, whatever, hurricane comes, blows my house, I got insurance.
Right. Exactly.
I'm comfortable. Like, it's a panic.
You're a plan B and plan C person like I am.
Yeah.
So when plan A goes awry,
which sometimes it does.
Yeah. But you're not in panic mode.
Right. Exactly.
You're not in panic mode. So,
there was something else you had there too.
What was? Yeah, it was. Let's see. Action items. We can talk about action items, right? When you're ready to plan, make sure you include your team's captains. Build a process for visioning and planning so everyone knows it's an event. Make big decisions quick, like if a team is not completing their missions or goals. Are you sharing your long-term plans with the people that can help you make those goals a reality? A lot of times you have these ideas in your mind, but you don't share them with the people around you. Right. And everybody needs to know, this is the bus that I'm on, this is where we're going. But
it's also developing in those people, once again, just like the Art of Delegation, it's developing in those people their law of attraction and realizing that they can get things done. Have you ever put pressure on somebody to get something done and knew that it was a learning process for them, right?
Right.
And you said, I know you can do it, and you keep encouraging them, and that person keeps coming back, I can't do it. I really just can't do it. It reminds me of that video, it's on YouTube, of the football coach that the kid says, I can't do that, and it's one of those wheelbarrow races.
Yeah. And
it's across so that somebody's got to, by his feet, and he's got to walk his hands all the way across the goal line, and it might be 50 yards, I believe it is. But the kid's crying about it. I can't do it. The coach blindfolds him. and he not even makes it not just the
fifth,
goal line.
yeah,
he makes it past
way
it
past,
and just
yeah.
keeps going.
Yeah.
And he realizes that he can do it. And it's like the most exhilarating thing. In the vision and planning part, don't get discouraged by the people that really feel like their commitment to themselves is not that high, and you try and help them make the commitment to themselves that they can get it done.
Absolutely.
Because it's so powerful, so powerful. And you change people's lives that way.
You do.
You know, not just your kids, not just your family, but business.
And, there's another piece in here that says, a dream is a plan without execution. I've never been a dreamer, even though I've always wanted to be. Some people that know me personally think that maybe I am. I'm a visionary, but I have a hard time dreaming of the big picture of things. But, or maybe simply, I do not define what I do as a dream. So the most important thing here is that you can do whatever you set your mind to, but you have to have an execution and you have to have a plan, right? So
And
a lot of people have
it's
goals.
Wilder than your dreams.
It is. Yeah. Well, it's funny because there's things that have happened to me that I've put some things in place, right? Like I've like designed the course the way that I want it to be, and then you end up, the results are even way bigger than you thought because you planned it out. It's just, I got story for days, but I think the last chapter is really powerful in terms of the belief factor. My wife has everything that she has, not everything she has, but she has like a picture on the wall, and she's got little things she keeps in her purse, and she's got a bag that has the word believe on it, right? And I started looking at that, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool, right? So I think that when you don't have belief, you don't have faith, you don't, then you're kind of like not, you're kind of giving up, right? You're not.
We're just going through the motions.
You're going through the motions. Yeah, that's a better way to say it. So what do you believe in? Ask yourself these questions. What do you believe in? Who do you believe in? And what makes you keep the faith? So it's a big chapter.
It's powerful because people think a lot of times when you talk about belief that it's all about religion, and on some level it is. I mean, we're both believers,
Right.
So I mean that's no secret necessarily. However, really the belief in yourself that you can do it, and that sometimes it's just you're a classroom away or a video away of learning something. Remember my story about Nova Scotia? I need
Right.
10 chords, and I had people like standing up and clapping, and I'm thinking to myself, I've had my guitar a month. Like,
Right.
why do they like me?
Great
But
story.
but from a belief standpoint, I believed in myself, and the ability to be able to believe in others comes as your confidence comes.
Right.
So and then all of a sudden now, okay, you put out a little feeler that person can do something, and then maybe you teach them or train them along the way. It's just great.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And my big thing is always believing in people. So I think one of my talents is that I like to meet people and just kind of get to understand who they are, their chemical makeup, their background, and kind of understand what their passion is. And I've been able to take people in a position, maybe let's relate it to work, right? Where they were in this particular position, they were working somewhere, and maybe I brought them into my organization, or I placed them with a friend of mine in their organization, and just their talents they were underutilized, So I believed in that person, and now all of a sudden their life has changed, right? So they've gone from a mediocre job that they didn't really care about to loving what they do, to maybe on a monetary standpoint making more money. They're happier. They've got a better life. So that's always something that I've always liked to do, is believe in people and help people believe in themselves and teach them to believe in themselves.
And we all fall, right? We all have a moment of weakness.
We do.
In some cases.
And it's about, it's hard to stay on top. You know what I mean? It's really easy to fail. I mean, the devil's on our left shoulder, God's on our right shoulder, and sometimes it's just more fun and easier just to talk to the left shoulder.
Yeah.
But you gotta get rid of that guy sometimes. Yeah. But when you believe in yourself and it comes from a good place, you have a natural ability to believe in others. Controversially, when you believe in others that do not believe in themselves, you are fighting a losing battle. Think about that. So that's right out of the book. So you have to align yourselves with people who believe in themselves. If you're with the negative, I'll use the negative Nancy.
There you go.
Sorry,
There you go.
Nancy's out there.
Or the conspiracy theories folks, or any of that.
Yeah, which everybody's got their thing, right? But you're going to fight a losing battle, so you have to make sure that it's equal on both sides, right? I have a story that I was going to tell you. My wife, this is kind of like my humble side of things. It was we had talked about this because you worked at Home Depot,
right? Yeah.
And so I told you about my Lowe's story, right?
Yeah.
So it was
a powerful story.
Yeah, it was the summer of, I know the story, but I'm going to read it here just so I can keep it brief. It was the summer of 2009. We were broke. The economy was in the shitter, and very few sales in real estate. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. There was no light at what appeared to be a dark tunnel. I recall going to Lowe's to get an AC filter for my house, and I saw 3 realtors I knew working there as employees. And I was like, wow. I mean, these are people that they were real estate agents that I had done deals with in recent years, right? Recent months, whatever. I think there was one that I had just closed on with somebody. It was strange, not to mention any names. But when I got home, I said to my wife, I think it's a sign, because I always believe in these signs, right? That maybe I should get a job at Lowe's to supplement my income while the real estate market is slow. She said, don't be silly, John. You're not going to work at Lowe's. You're an amazing business owner and salesman, and stop being stupid and go figure it out. And I was like, wow, that was aggressive. My wife is very, she's very to the point. We're both to the point, but I like to tell the story and kind of massage it a little bit. And she's like, no, we're not doing that. I'm like, well, hold on a second. No, we're not doing that. So she really hit me that day, and I was like, wow, that's okay. So later on that week, I created a marketing program for our real estate business that said, I'll sell your home in 99 days or my commission is free. And I immediately put that into action. And in the business of either working for yourself or being a salesperson, you always want to have something that you're excited about, right? Whether it's a new business card or you buy a new suit or you come up with a new marketing program. For me, it was like, this marketing program is going to take over the world. I mean, I'm telling you, this is going to be it. So I started putting it out there. At the time, I did a lot of mailings. I was doing magazine mailings. I was doing postcards. And I started to get some traction. It was incredible. I had a lot of people calling me. And what I had was a lot of real estate agents that were upset with me. And they were like, there must be some kind of gimmick. There must be something. I'm like, there's no gimmick. So I remember putting this into place, starting to get some listings, and I actually had to sell somebody's house for free because we were past the 99 days. And I got to tell you, I was so proud of myself. I was so happy to do it because it was my program. This particular property, it didn't work, and I was just happy to give the homeowner the discount that they deserved. But also what it did was it put a sense of urgency on things for myself to say, well, you know what, John, you've only got 99 days to make this happen. Right. It put a sense of urgency on the consumer, the seller, to say, well, they actually weren't, there was a time where I thought maybe they wanted to wait to 100 days, but we were in such a market where people needed to sell that they weren't even looking at that. They were just like, we want it sold. We don't care what it costs to pay. We want to pay a commission because at that time you couldn't sell your house. So it was a win-win for the seller, win-win for the buyer, win-win for me. And I thank Laura for telling me that because sometimes you just need to get kicked in the butt a little bit. Right. And you have to believe in yourself. And what happened is that reason why I was trying to get a job, or I was thinking about getting a job at Lowe's, was because I didn't believe in myself. Right.
It was that moment of weakness. But keep in mind, too, that a lot of people would have had a moment of weakness as well when all those other agents came after you a little bit, right. And talking trash against you and stuff. Right. I'm here to tell you, if nobody's ever told you this before, when people start talking trash about you, you're doing something right.
Okay.
You're doing something right. And, in the good way.
Well, I don't like to talk trash.
No.
But I guess when people talk trash, then I'll embrace it.
No, challenging a marketing thing, not necessarily attacking you personally, right? But challenging a marketing thing or challenging the way that you're doing business. If people are talking about it, there's something there.
Yeah.
So don't give up.
Yeah,
Don't give up and have belief in yourself. Yeah. So what's the next book going to be on, John?
Well, it's going to be the art of communication, right? So
we haven't decided communication or conversation. I don't know if we've completely decided yet.
We're getting there, but there's definitely there's definitely a lot of miscommunication in the world.
Yes.
There's mixed messages, and I've always had a very high appreciation for people who are good communicators, and who are able to articulate themselves in a certain way. And we know that communication is kind of lost, right, with digital tools nowadays, right? We're going, it's more of, we're more.
Well, because when somebody puts a post, for instance, on Facebook or social media, any social media at that point, and you get 30 different opinions underneath it.
Right.
That there's a that globally there's a communication problem.
There's a breakdown. There's a problem.
Right. There's a problem somewhere.
So we're not claiming to solve all the problems in the world, but we're just going to solve a few problems at a time. We want to encourage people to be the best they are.
And send us topics. I mean, if there's something from a business standpoint or questions that you have, you can send emails right here to John at, I don't know which email is working best for you these days.
John at johncurri.com.
The easy. John, CURRI.com. Yep. And send information or send topics that you want to talk about, and we'll certainly cover them here on the podcast.
Yeah, and we hope to continue with not only additional books, but we'll have,
we're building an empire.
Yeah.
On a TED Talks near you.
There you go. Toast on the Coast here in Brevard County. That's right. And from time to time, we'll actually give you real estate updates as well, and updates on some places where you can see Ellen. Where's the next place you're playing?
We are playing this weekend at Squid Lips in Melbourne.
Fantastic.
And then on Sunday at Malabar Moe's. Iconic little local dives that we love to play.
I love it. Ellen's got a fantastic following. She's awesome at what she does, and she's definitely changed my life, and got me to complete some projects that were unfinished. So thank you so much for that. Love having you, and
toast on the coast, y'all.
Okay, we look forward to seeing you guys next time, and thanks for tuning in.